Okay, yeah, we're live
Great.
now. So, hello, my name is Madeline Dyer, and I am a fiction writer and non-fiction too, and I've just had a poetry collection release earlier this year. I'm joined by Sarah Anderson, who's one of my close friends and an amazing author. I read and devour absolutely everything that she writes, so I was really excited to invite her here to do this live discussion / interview with me. So, Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself and your book?
Well, thank you. You just made me blush, so I'm going to switch glasses. It's going to be all braggy about being in Provence and too much sun, but indoors you need glasses. So, hi, Madeline. So good to see you as author to author instead of just awesome friends who happen to write books. And thank you for your wonderful words, because I am madly a fan of you. So right now I just want to give you a hug.
Thank you.
I am Sarah Anderson, also publishing under the name S.E. Anderson. I write books about space, but I also write books about where I love to live, Aix-en-Provence. So this new book is coming out a little later. It's coming out June 16th, and I'm really excited about it because most of it was based on my own experiences. Just like your own book was, well, not just based on, but is your own experiences dealing with OCD and brain inflammation. And it's just amazing the poetry you wrote. Just, wow. So, I mean, we realized I don't remember exactly when, that we both happen to have written nonfiction, but not the normal memoir type book. So we thought it'd be fun to talk about that, right?
Yeah, because we've both gone quite unconventional routes in telling sort of these stories and our own personal experiences. So yeah, I've got my poetry collection here as well. This is based on my therapy writings I did when I was suffering from severe brain inflammation, which then caused psychosis and OCD. So my therapy writings are very much poetry based, and this collection is basically just a collection of the poems that I'd written, and it gives you good insight, I think, into sort of my mental state at that time, and also the agency that I needed in order to push for a diagnosis from doctors. So I think the poetry form really sort of fitted with my therapy writings and really helped explain what I was feeling. So that's mainly why I chose just to release it as a poetry collection. So it's a bit of an unconventional memoir because it's not sort of a straightforward narrative. And your book, Sarah, is based on your own experiences, isn't it? So it's like a fictionalized version of several events in your life.
Yeah, so pretty much everything that happened in this book, except for the treasure hunt that ties everything together, every event actually happened to me or to a friend. Every interaction I've had with locals, or myself being local, but it's weird calling myself that because I am American. I've just always lived here. This is my home. I've been in this house for 20 years. And taking all these experiences and writing about them, but using fictional characters to interact with these situations, it was a fun way to work through my own feelings of being an outsider in a place that is mine. And do I have a right to call it mine? That's always been something I've been struggling with. And being able to use another character to deal with that situation was it was therapeutic for me, but also just really fun. Just really fun. Hi, Anna. Good to see you. So glad you're here. It's exciting that people can leave us comments. I like that.
Yeah, I forgot to say about the live chat at the start of this, actually. So if you do have any questions that you want us to answer, if you just put them in as comments on the live chat, and then we can get them up on the screen as well to sort of interact. I knew there was something else I was supposed to say at the start of this, but I got straight on to talking about the books.
Well, we're moving pretty quickly through just introducing ourselves and talking about our projects. I think we're moving quicker than we expected to already.
Yeah. But yeah, I love your book, Aix Marks the Spot, because I got to read an early copy of it, and I remember when you were writing it, you were just messaging me all the time because you wrote the first draft so quickly, and I could just feel your enthusiasm and excitement about it, and it was just almost contagious.
Excitement.
That's
sorry, I had to.
So yeah, because your book is a young adult contemporary story, and yeah, I love the contemporary nature of it because it's very different to other fiction, which is science fiction.
And completely absurd science fiction. None of that stuff's happening, and if it did, I would be in deep trouble.
That is true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like your characterization, especially in this book. Like all the characters feel really real, and I especially like Jamie's grandmother. Because like there's just sort of like this sense of disconnect with her, but also like immediate connection because of family. So you've kind of got that like conflict there. And yeah, I really liked that. And she just felt so real, and she was honestly one of my favorite characters.
Oh, thank you. A lot of people don't like her because they're just like, oh, she's a evil old woman. But the thing is, I've met a lot of people like her. And, you know, growing up with a lot of my friends being international, we have that struggle of having people who we know because they're family, but not getting to spend the time that we want to spend. Oh, thanks, Anna. I'm crazy working on book 7. I am writing fast and I am writing terribly, but it will be done in time for our deadline. So thank you, Anna. So yes, Mamie, so grandma in French. She's struggling. I mean, all these characters are struggling with the disconnect that they feel from each other because they just have different cultural roots, different experiences, and it's hard to have any reason to bond with these complete strangers who are only family because they're blood. You don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
So writing her was really fun because I could really base it on a lot of the, oh, okay, generalizing here, old grumps that I've had to deal with.
Okay.
And especially when I first arrived in France, that's another point of this book is that, if I give a quick recap, Jamie is forced to go to France because her mom was in a car accident and they don't have the space to have her around while her mom is recovering. So they send her to live with her estranged grandma, whom her dad hasn't spoken to since he ran off before she was born from France and just hasn't spoken to her since. And so going back to meet this person who is a complete stranger, but she's your grandma. So how do you deal with that? And when I first arrived in France, that's when Jamie's parents left France. So all the letters that Jamie later finds in the book that are written by her father are set in the time that I first arrived in France, while Jamie is reacting to finding these letters at our current stage where I am now. So it was a fun way to explore, you know, just how the culture has changed here over the past 20 years. Well, 17 in her case. When I wrote this, it was a perfect teenage years, but it's now 20 years. And when I first arrived, I kept getting grumpy old people yelling, "We're in France, you speak French," yelling it to me. I would be walking in the street with my friends. I would be a 6-year-old kid just like, "Oh, yay, I'm so happy to speak English with someone else." And they're like, "On est en France, on parle français." And I heard that all the time. And just trying to take those types of people and create a character out of them, but not dismissing the fact that they do have a real fear of losing their culture to globalization. Because these are people, I mean, they were angry. They weren't angry at 6-year-old me, but they were angry at what I represented. And that was their culture being distilled by these big Hollywood movies and Americans coming over and taking over Provence because they just love it so much. And so that's where a lot of the anger and resentment Mamie has goes towards Jamie. It's what I was feeling. I was on the receiving end of that. So it was hard to write because I don't want to accept that these people have a reason to be angry at me, but I mean, they have a reason to be angry at me.
It sounds like it was a really important book for you to write and like very close to your heart because it's just so like wrapped up in what you were experiencing and feeling. And I can sort of see Jamie as like a representation of you because you use her to explore a lot of different important ideas to do with culture and like this sense of like not fitting in and not knowing like who you are, and like a lot of it is about sort of identity and exploring one's identity and becoming comfortable with your identity. So yeah. So did you face any challenges in writing this book, particularly given that it's based on things that you experienced? So were you worried about friends or family recognizing themselves in some of your fictional characters?
Definitely, which is why I tried to make each character a good conglomeration of people rather than just being based off of one person I know. Because it would be very weird if I based Valentin on my actual French boyfriend, because then he'd read it and be like, what? So I tried to put in all the people I know. Basically, writing it as a fictional book is a lot easier than writing in nonfiction in that way. Because if I had written an actual memoir and brought all these people up, and they'd be like, it didn't happen like that. when I'm sure it was. I mean, we're very biased. Even nonfiction has a part of fiction because of your own reflection and your own perception during an actual real memory. Yes, it happened to you like that, but it didn't at the same time.
Yeah.
So writing it as fiction completely removed that whole bias of nonfiction, of real people having to deal with seeing themselves represented through my eyes on these pages. So it gave me a lot more freedom. And I think that's what held me back from writing a real nonfiction, is because I felt trapped by reality and having it come crash down on me.
Yeah, I understand that, because I've been working on like this full-length memoir about my experiences as well, and I'm finding that quite difficult to write, just because, like, obviously it's not just about me, it's got like friends and family and all the doctors and everything are also in it, and I'm just very aware that I'm writing about real people in this way, and that can feel a bit restrictive. So, but then I'm also using this memoir to explore almost critically memoir as a form, and how memoirs are based on memories which are subjective. So they, like, a memoir could be true to one person, but anyone else reading it who interacted with that person probably won't have had the same experience. So I am sort of like examining memory within my own work like that. But yeah, I definitely agree that writing fiction is there's a lot more freedom with it, and I do keep getting a bit bogged down with a memoir because of that, because it's quite heavy and dense in that respect.
Yeah, and you've got to take a few breaks, I imagine, because it is an emotional experience to write something like that. It's going to be draining. It's going to be exhausting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I keep saying like, oh, I'll have a completed draft soon, but I don't know like at what point, because I'm still writing a memoir because it's spanning a couple of years, and I wanted to stop it at the point where I'm sort of like receiving treatment, and like I know that I'm getting better from it. But as that point hasn't happened yet, I'm just sort of like adding more and more chapters, just sort of like recounting like the most recent stuff that's happened. And it's kind of like I'm getting the feeling of, is this ever going to end? Like, am I just going to be writing this book forever? But yeah, I am enjoying writing it because it's very useful to help me process like emotions and everything that I've been through, and like the lingering sort of psychosis and OCD that I've still got. And yeah, that was mainly why I did actually write these poems in the first place, was because it was to help me process what was happening and understanding my emotions through it. Because like when I had food brain inflammation, I couldn't really communicate verbally that well, and I couldn't express to others how exactly I was feeling. But I couldn't write fiction either, because that part of my brain was just so like inflamed and damaged that I had to take.
I remember you. I really just want to give you a hug so bad, because you love writing fiction, and it just was, it hurt. You couldn't get it out. And then you come up with something so beautiful. Poetry it's amazing. And to think that you were going through so much pain and you still managed to create something just beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, it must have hurt. How did you manage to sit down and put pen to paper? And there's a spider. There's a massive spider. Sorry, dang, that was a big spider. Now it's in my room. Sorry.
Yeah, so when I was writing this poetry, I was writing it solely for myself, and it was kind of comforting to know that no one else would read it, so I could be completely honest. I could really explore how I was feeling, and it's the only time I've actually written poetry seriously, because normally I'm just like prose all the way. But I just found that poetry sort of spoke to me more, and I found it a lot easier to write poetry than prose or fiction, with like all this like brain information and how like cognitively I was affected. So I was just like writing this poetry, and it allowed me to sort of keep hold of my identity as a writer, and it made me feel better writing all this stuff. But it was just really dark, and I didn't want anyone else to read it, because I kind of felt ashamed of how dark it was in places, and I just didn't want people to know. But at the same time, I couldn't communicate verbally, so I needed to like show what I was feeling to some extent. So I did actually share a few poems. Like I think I shared one pretty early on with you. And
yeah, I think it's one that was ended up being towards the middle of your book, because it was the middle of your experience. You weren't showing me the first ones yet, because that was still very personal to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really flattered you wanted to show it to me, and it was amazing.
Yeah, because you're actually the first person that I showed any of my poetry to.
Oh my God, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so I showed a poem to you, and I showed one to some friends, like in the same country as me, and my family. And then I was in like the support group for other people who suffer from this type of brain inflammation. And they said that like reading my poetry really helped them know that they weren't alone.
Oh,
And
wow.
the type of brain inflammation I have often affects children. So in the support group, a lot of parents of affected children were reading it, and they said it helped them understand how their children were feeling, because when you've got like this acute brain inflammation, you can't really communicate it verbally to those around you.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Especially as a kid, not having the vocabulary. And then
yeah,
when you
exactly.
can't, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a kid struggling with this. Because
Mhm.
you also get hallucinations when at your very worst of it, right?
Yeah, like I was convinced that birds were flying around me all the time.
Oh.
Like even when I was indoors, and like I could hear the birds, like the flapping of their wings. I could feel like the change in the air around me. I could see them. I could like hear them calling. And I remember one night I woke up. It was about 2 a.m. and I was convinced there was a bird flying around my room. And I stayed awake trying to catch this bird until
Oh
about
my gosh.
at which point my mum like got up and she asked me what I was doing, and I was saying I'm trying to catch this bird. And my mum came in, she couldn't see it. She like
Wow.
assured me that there was not a bird here, but I was just so convinced because it felt like only I could see it, and it felt like it was a real danger to me. But yeah, that was all just like the brain inflammation just causing these hallucinations. So yeah, birds do feature quite prominently in this collection.
Yeah.
It's like a running motif throughout it about the birds and like the wings, because like even now when I don't get like the hallucinations like that anymore. But
That's real.
even now when I go outside and if I see a bird or hear like a bird song or anything, I immediately feel really uneasy because I'm like, well,
Wow.
what if it's not real and it's happening again? Because when it was happening, I couldn't distinguish between what was real and what wasn't.
Wow, that's pretty scary. Like even now, you can't trust your own thoughts and memories. I like how you're taking the whole nonfiction, writing a memoir, but at the same time, not even being able to trust. Well, I don't like it. I like what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
It must be terrible to actually live that fear. And that's amazing that you are sitting down to write this memoir and working through this, but while still trying to reach the end. And it
Yeah.
kind of hit me earlier when you said you can't wait for this book to be done.
Yeah.
But the thing is that really what you're saying is I can't wait to have this diagnosis and have this to be over.
Yeah, that's the thing, because and obviously with the pandemic at the moment,
Oh
that's
my
just
gosh.
slowing everything. So
Yeah, because
like
you're
I'm
not getting
feeling for
the help you need because all the doctors are rushed to the front line, so to speak.
yeah, so like I'm still being given like the antibiotic treatment that I need to just like control the brain inflammation so it's at manageable levels that I can still work. But I haven't like been able to start the long-term treatment at the moment. So a lot of it is just like about waiting. But I want this sort of like section of my life to be over so then I can just like concentrate on like moving on. And like I
Yeah.
really want to get this like full length memoir out as well, because I just think that is quite an important story to tell, like not only like raising awareness about this condition and sort of like showing other people who suffer from it that they're not alone in their experiences, but it also be like really therapeutic for me just to like have finished this book and just got it out. So yeah, it's a bit weird because I'm going to end up with like two memoirs, because I've got like the first memoir, which is the poetry collection, and then I've got this second memoir, which is more like analytical. And in it, I have been interviewing other people who have suffered from it as well. So it's got like, it starts off just with my point of view and my experiences, but then I do like widen it to show that it's not just me affected. And I do take quite a literary like angle as well in examining it and examining like memories and hallucinations. And yeah, I'm having quite
It's
fun with
gonna
it.
be amazing. I
Quite,
can't wait to read it. Wow. I mean, I was already excited, but now I'm just getting like really excited. Now I can't wait for this all to be over so I can read it.
I'll be sending you a first copy, I'm sure.
Yes. So excited. And also because when it will be done, it means that you have got a diagnosis and you are ready. Take on the world, and you already are.
But
So-
yeah, talking about your book, did you ever consider writing it as a straightforward memoir, or was the idea always to fictionalize it?
Yeah, actually, a way that my parents used to help me rationalize things that made no sense. My mom still does this to the day. She just says, "Another chapter in your book," and I love that about her. And she's probably also writing a memoir too about her experiences. She's a mom who basically, she's American and she raised a French kid in a culture that she couldn't explain to her daughter. I had to learn a lot of things for myself, and I'm still helping my parents out with French. I mean, literally just before this call, I was down translating for them, dealing with some neighbor things. And it's just, I have been this little collection of chapters that I've written down in the moment just to help me process what just happened here. I've got quite a few of them sitting on my computer, and I just knew I was going to write a memoir. I knew that I had to tell the story. I came up with a title, Growing Up Frenglish, and like I was ready to write this memoir. But every time I sat down from the computer, as we were talking about earlier, the truth about it held me back. I'm like, my friends are not going to like to see themselves this way. Or what if the French government sees that I've talked bad about them and they're going to be like, boo, we don't want you to get French citizenship. I know that's completely absurd, but you know how author brains are. You know, you've got this whole, what do you call it? Not insecurity, imposter syndrome. Yeah. I get that all the time about my identity, just, you know, I'm French, but I'm not. And wow, my postman is calling me. That's very strange. All this to say that I was holding back. I was just in nonfiction. And then one summer, I was dealing with really bad gut problems, really bad. And a friend of mine said, I know an energy healer. And I'm like, what? And she says, I know this person works so well that I'm going to pay your session. And that's not a small thing. Like that, they're pretty expensive. So I met with this woman, and it was a really great experience, which is amazing coming from someone who is an astrophysicist and doesn't really give much to their claims about what they can do. But I left the session feeling really good and just really light. And she told me that I needed to ground myself more. And she did a little grounding experience ceremony. I'm not exactly sure what it was. But I woke up the next morning with the entire plot of this book in my head. Like literally woke up with the whole book. And it took me a week to write the first draft. That just never happened to me before. Hasn't happened to me since. It was a joy to write. And even just editing was fun because I could expand on things. And I had no idea how all these characters came together and all these chapters came together. I think it was my mom who pointed out that like my life was like a stew and it was finally simmering and ready to eat. Just all the ingredients coming in, and then just finally it's ready to be a book. So it was not at all what I set out to do when I started writing my truth, my story. But it came out like this, and I can't believe this book is real. I can't believe I'm holding it. And there we go. I can't believe it's coming out next month. Like that is insane to me.
That is so close.
I'm so freaking out. I'm forgetting what I'm talking about. I'm excited because all these things it makes me feel like they all happen to me for a reason in a weird way. And being able to use narrative to make sense of my life. I mean, I remember a TV show, The Community, that talks about movies and how they make sense. Movies have a plot. They have an antagonist. They have a villain. And the reason that he's always living in this like movie life is because that's how he sees the world and how it helps him process the world. And I think being a writer, it allows us a really incredible freedom to try to process our lives in a way that non-writers can only dream of. Yeah. But yeah, being able to fictionalize my experience helped me deal with the actual truth of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So like when you were fictionalizing it, because like you've already mentioned that the treasure hunt in the book isn't actually based on anything that you experienced. Yeah. Were there any other parts like that where you sort of like employed creative license to make it more plot shaped?
No. Well, I didn't have the buses completely breaking down or not showing up randomly. I only had one bus mishap. In real life, that would not happen. I am just so used to waiting an hour for a bus that doesn't show up, having to walk 4 kilometers to a train station for the train not to show up. I mean, that's just life. But yeah, other than that, everything really is real. Every little moment with a tourist, every overheard conversation in the bus where I'm just sitting there like, is this person real? And just wanting to say something and not being able to. I'm really happy that I even got to put my favorite bus driver in here. Growing up, I always had to take the bus to go to high school, and well, 3 buses actually to get there. But there was one that was driven by this amazing man. His name is Bo, and his dream is to drive a bus in North Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah. And he wears a Stetson and he plays country music in the bus. And he loves trying to speak English with me. And he goes, "Hello, how are you?" And I'm just so happy to see this guy. So I managed to put him in the book because, I mean, I didn't have to change his character at all because he's just a real character and he's a wonderful person. And I wonder where he's finally driving his bus there.
I remember reading it and like coming across this character and it's just like really joyful. But he did actually remind me of one of your characters in your Starstruck saga, the Postman,
Really?
in the first book. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, like I don't know, I just sort of like had this sort of like sense of unity between the two of them. And I thought like it's quite typical of one of your books in a way, because you've got like this sort of like minor character, but you know that they could easily become like a huge focus, and you know there's a lot to their story, and like it's a sign of like your characterization being so good, really, because like even like all your minor characters and like just people in the background and people that aren't like a driving force of your story just seem so real, and I just kind of like want to sort of like shine the spotlight on them more.
That is so sweet. Thank you so much. And now I'm starting to really think how much not real life have I put into the characters in my books. It is easier to build off things that already exist that you know. Like, I don't know about you, but how has your personal experience dealing with brain inflammation and OCD actually gone into your characters? Not just in Untamed, but any projects you're working on now?
Yeah, so well, I wrote the Untamed series before I had all this brain information. So I mean, there's not really sort of like any comparable link that I can really say then, because I hadn't experienced any of it. But at the moment, I am writing quite a lot of thrillers. So my second thriller, which I'm working on at the moment, and well, a draft of it is due to my agent quite soon. And the main character in that, I've done it like as an own voices young adult novel, where she also suffers from the same type of brain inflammation and the OCD that's been induced by the brain inflammation. So I am sort of like writing that very much like from my personal experiences, but only her character. So like the main focus of the thriller is not her illness, it's just like this separate thing that she's also dealing with.
Do you think you would have gone into writing thrillers if you hadn't been through all these experiences yourself? Because you really started getting into writing thrillers after you got through the worst of your inflammation. If I can say the worst, I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah.
It's a recent development, and you are going, like, you are the thriller queen right now.
It's an interesting thing because, as I said earlier, when I started getting this brain inflammation, like a couple of months into it, I couldn't write any fiction because like that part of my brain was just too inflamed, because it's all the basal ganglia part of my brain that was inflamed, and it caused like an arachnoid cyst as well. So like I had very like limited function in certain regions of my brain. But when all of this was like developing, like the first 2 months, I don't know if you remember, but that's when I first started writing the first draft of my first thriller. And I wrote that whole draft like really quickly, and it was just like this really dark thing that I'd never like written anything quite like it before, and I just like fell in love with it, and I just had to write it as quickly as possible. And I don't know whether subconsciously I knew that like the next month I wouldn't be able to write at all because the brain inflammation was worsening, because like it was literally like the day before when I suddenly couldn't write that I'd actually finished this new draft of a thriller.
Wow.
And it like, yeah, the timing of it was just like quite unbelievable in a way, because I was just like, I had like this sense of a countdown as I was writing about it. I had to finish it, and I didn't entirely know why, because I knew I hadn't got a deadline for it. And I remember workshopping it with this critique group that I'm in, and I kept saying to them, "Oh, have you got any feedback yet? I need to know like what to work on next." And I was just like desperate to work on it. I became quite obsessed by it. So I suppose that does like link into the OCD, because that did become one of my obsessions. Though the OCD did like mainly manifest as contamination, a subset of OCD. But yeah, then once I was getting like I had like 15 weeks of the antibiotic treatment and steroids and stuff to control the inflammation, once doctors knew that it wasn't just regular OCD that I had, and that it was caused by this physiological condition. And during my recovery from that was like the first stage of it all. That was when I then like started reading this thriller that I'd written, and it kind of felt like someone else had written it in a way, because it was just so different to anything that I had written before, because it's like it's really different to like my Untamed series and like my fantasy novella that I've written. So it was just really different. And I thought, oh well, now that my brain inflammation is under control, I wouldn't be able to write any more thrillers. But then I found when I started editing it and like writing new chapters, I could. And it was like the brain inflammation in a way is like opened up this new like part of my brain, and I'm now like able to write thrillers. And I suppose like I've always wanted to be able to write thrillers, but before I could never quite manage it and it just didn't feel right. Whereas now it's like something's clicked and I feel like I know more how to do it.
That's
so
incredible.
I'm just having a lot of fun with writing thrillers. But
I can tell they're really good. They are like so gripping.
Yeah, because you've read the second one, which is the one I'm working on at the moment with revisions. But yeah, they're really different to like my dystopian novels, aren't they? So
wow.
Yeah,
One
and I
thing that you
haven't
do really well, both in your thrillers, well, your one thriller I've read so far, and the Untitled series, is write characters, the frustration when no one believes them or no one takes them seriously. And I feel like there's a lot going on there. And it's just one of those things that I can feel their frustration while reading it. And just, I feel angry for them. I'm just like, no, you deserve better. They need to, and it's just one of those things that I think that's a good link between your two series, is that those are the type of characters that you can make the reader really care and really invest themselves in characters like that.
Thank you. Yeah, like my books are always really character driven, so I guess like that makes sense. But like with a thriller that you've read, that is one where it's very much based on my experiences. So a lot of that frustration that I've like written into the character is just something that I felt. And like this sense of like not being able to like fully trust whether I'm like experiencing something like in real life or whether I am hallucinating again, because I've always got that worry now.
Wow. Your own brain is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, it is. And I love unreliable narrators now. Like I'm just so intrigued by them, and especially when intentionally like unreliable narrators, they're like a morally grey character as well.
Ooh,
Quite often. So yeah, I'm just sort of like I'm having so much fun with writing these thrillers, but it does also mean I'm sort of moving away from dystopian now. So, I mean, my Untamed series is finished. I've also got the Dangerous One series, which is dystopian as well, and it's set in the same world as the Untamed. And book 2 of that one released in February, and then I've just got like one more book because that's a trilogy to write. So, yeah, I'm gonna write one more dystopian at least, but at the moment I just want to be writing thrillers because I just feel that that's what speaks to me more personally now, and it's what I need to be working on.
That's incredible. That's so fantastic. And they are so good. I mean, people watching this are probably gonna be like, oh, she's just patting you on the back, but really no. I mean, I'm a massive fan. They're really, really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got my book 2 here.
Yes, that was my favorite of the Dangerous Ones, and even Untamed series, because Inga, your main character, is so driven, and I just love her. She is just like a pot of revenge, and she's boiling over, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
I couldn't put it down. I really couldn't. I think I read it in 2 days.
Thank you. Yeah, so like my character Inga in This Vicious Way. Here it is again, just because I love showing it off.
It's a beautiful cover. I'm crazy about it.
Yeah, it was designed by Molly Phipps. We got you covered book design. And
she did the interior of Aix Marks the Spot. Hold on, I gotta show you guys the amazing headers she made. Molly Phipps is amazing. Big call out from Molly. Isn't she great?
But yeah, the main character of this book, she is what I typically think of as a main character of one of my thrillers now, because as you said, like she's so like intent on revenge. She's not the nicest of characters, and she's like not very sympathetic, and that's just exactly the type of thriller character I write now. So like the narrator of my first thriller, she's very like unreliable, and then I've got like who's unreliable in this one.
Sorry,
okay.
It's just pollen. It's just pollen.
Okay, and then yeah, my second thriller, which is one you've written, like you've got this like overarching question about whether the main character is reliable or not, just because you know that she has hallucinations and that she's had experience with psychosis and mental health. So I'm just really into writing like unreliable narrators now. So this dystopian book I just released, it's closer to a thriller than I'd say any of my other dystopian novels. And I think you can really like see that this was one of the books that I wrote after my brain inflammation, because I kind of like see it as like before and after now in dividing my books up.
That's neat. You've got your own little blue period, or in your case, yeah. I haven't figured out a good name for it. I will come up with one. But anyway, I love that because they are just, I mean, I love the thrillers and I love your Untamed series, and This Vicious Way is just the perfect, I mean, you're taking a dystopian setting, but a thriller plot. And I just love when authors do that, when they take two genres and bend them together to their will. It just makes for such a compelling story because you haven't read anything like it anywhere before.
Thank you. Yeah, I did want to be like writing something quite new to me and like that kept me entertained as well, but that also matched with what I wanted to be writing now. So like I've still got to write the third book in this trilogy, and I'm really like interested to see whether that's going to be more thriller orientated as well, because if so, it's going to be like quite a division between the first book in the trilogy, which I wrote before the brain inflammation. That's kind of like a fun survival story of like this reckless main character who does whatever she wants without thinking of consequences, whereas like Inga is much more cold and calculating. And I think the third book is going to be more sort of like a thriller template as well.
Sweet. So. Write it. I want to write it. I want to read it.
Okay. Yeah. Would you write any more sort of like unconventional memoirs then?
I was thinking about it. I don't know if I have the guts for this yet, but one of the big things I've been struggling with being in France is that I am not French, which means that by definition, I am an immigrant. But the way that I'm treated compared to my friends from North Africa is just night and day. Despite the fact that we both come from middle-class families, we both showed up in France to do the same kind of studies. But I have people telling me, like French people will say, oh, it's crazy how these people come to the country and they're getting all this free money. And I'm like, I'd like some free money. I'm an immigrant. And they're like, well, we're not talking about you. And it's just they brush it off so casually. And it really makes it evident that they don't have a problem with immigrants. They have a problem with being racist. And I would love to write a book about this disparity, but at the same time, I don't think that, it's not that my point of view isn't valid, it's just not the right one. And I'd like to write it from the point of view of one of my friends, but then I feel like I don't have a right. It's not my culture and it's not an experience I've personally had. But at the same time, if I'm writing a book about, oh, I'm a white girl and I'm in France and everyone's accepting me, but not my buddies, then I just feel like people are going to call it white girl moping, you know? Or, yeah. So it's one of those things that I definitely want to go and scream off rooftops that, hey, if you accept me, you accept everybody else. If not, kick me out. I will be mad, but you have to take a stance that isn't based on race. And I want to just scream that from rooftops, and maybe I'll be able to wake up and write a whole book based on that one day once this pot simmers over. But until then, I'm not ready. But it'll probably happen. I mean, it's just, I've had stupid experiences like with this, just waiting in the waiting room of the préfecture when you're getting your visa renewed is a completely different experience for me. Because I just walk up and I'm like, hi, I'm a student. I need this visa so I can live. And it's inconvenient, but it's done. And meanwhile, I'm seeing people who on their way in get yelled at by someone on the street, like, go back to your country. Like, that's not an experience that I have. I could pass for French until someone hears my accent. It's just, it's totally unfair. And it's something I'm really, really angry about, but I just don't have a place to say it yet.
Okay. So like, if you did in the future decide to sort of write something exploring this that you've experienced, do you think you would be sort of like drawn to fictionalizing it again? Or would you try and do it like more as a straightforward memoir?
I think it would be more fictionalized, or parts of it would show up in my actual memoir, which I haven't completely discounted yet. I'm probably going to end up writing that someday. With you've been writing your memoir. You have an end in place in mind. You know that it's going to end when you have that diagnosis. And that's a great place to end the memoir. But for me, my story is still ongoing. And I could end it when I graduate high school, or I could end it when I graduate university. But since it's still my everyday life, being this Frenglish girl, there's no actual end for me. There's no place for me to end it. I could call it like 10 years in Provence or childhood in Provence and end it when I turn 18. But I can't figure out how I want to showcase it.
Yeah, that's
So
a good point. 'Cause I guess it's something that you're going to be experiencing a long time. Like it's not like with mine. My story, I'm going to end it once I start getting the treatment. Because, like with mine, although I've already got a diagnosis, they don't know how to treat it at this point.
yeah.
So mine is like, there's a definite, like if I think of mine as a like fiction story, then if I am my main character, then her goal is to find out which treatment that she can have. So that is like clear goal that once it's obtained, the manuscript can end. But as you say with yours, it's not sort of like as contained as that, and
Yeah.
it is something that can be like quite like it's something you're just going to keep experiencing, really. So I guess it would depend like when you feel that you want to write it and when you feel
Maybe I'll end it get my French citizenship, because that's going to be an adventure too. So that'll be a nice big chapter. Because for the time being, it's just, I mean, I have enough to publish a book. I have got dozens of chapters written about the weird things I've lived in this country, and I could publish it as is, but there's no plot. There's no reason to stop after reading one chapter. At this point, it's like disconnected essays.
Right.
A lot of people I know who want books about Provence, they want the romance, which you get a nice dose of that in Aix Marks the Spot. But my romance is the chillest romance. I am very happily in love with my favorite guy. But all these people are like, "Ooh, are you going to move to a vineyard together?" And it's really funny, actually. My family was, when they met my boyfriend, we're like, "Oh my gosh, he's French. Oh my gosh, he's French." And I'm just like, yeah, he's also like a scientist and he's just like me. And people have been like, "Oh my gosh, you have a French boyfriend. Is he really romantic?" And I'm like, I mean, last night we drank red wine, but we also ate an entire kilo of tater tots and watched Futurama. So yeah, that's pretty romantic. So that it doesn't make for what people want. They want to hear these really romantic and passionate stories about Provence, but I can't give them that. I can just give them real life, which is that it's the same as everywhere else, except it's sunny all the time and people are a bit weird. But
I guess that's like good for like combating stereotypes. So like when you were writing the romance in Aix Marks the Spot, were you sort of like writing it more to fulfill like these sort of like archetypal ideas of what people have about romance in France? Or were you trying to give like a more realistic view?
a little bit of both. I mean, you've got a real French guy, and he's driven by his own experiences growing up in France. And I find, no offense, Americans, but at the end of high school, French teenagers tend to be a little bit more mature than American teenagers. And this is a big blanket statement. I mean, this is not always the case. But I just know that my experience with my guy friends in high school, there was nothing sexual. There was no hanky-panky. I didn't worry about any of them wanting me or wanting to get in my pants. I never had to deal with that. And Valentin is driven by that same thing. From my own experience, from the guys I knew, that he is just a guy who's trying to help this girl out because she's lost and she's worried and she's in pain, and he's just a person who doesn't want to see another person in pain. And the fact that they fall in love happens organically, and I wanted to show it as just this sweet romance. He's not going there to sweep her off her feet. He's just like, "Hey, I like you." Yeah. So I tried to walk that line and also give the reader what they want, because everyone was really shipping them from the beginning. And yes, they're going to end up together. It is a YA romance. It is a fiction. But I hope that me writing them falling in love wasn't the traditional YA insta-love, and that it actually did fall into a real people having a real experience together.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I definitely think it seemed realistic when I read it, because like it wasn't like love at first sight, and you did sort of like build up like a friendship between them first, which I really appreciated reading that. I also really liked how, although like it is sort of like this love story, it also covers like these darker topics, like the exploration of like family and redemption. And whilst it does lead to love, it shows like tragedy is sort of like the accident which happens before the book starts, with like the injuries that her mother sustains from it. So I really liked how you looked at how like tragedy can lead to love, but at the same time it's all wrapped up in this fun treasure hunt style game. So it's just got so many different layers to this book,
Yeah.
and so many different things that you can read from it. And like certain parts had me like laughing out loud, and yet other parts like so just like really poignant and emotional, and but I didn't laugh at all, but like really grabbed me.
I think it was an easier thing to write than if I had come up with it. I was gonna say come up with it on my own. Yes, I came up with it. But the fact that I could distill all these experiences and put them in one book made it easier than trying to come up with them outside of it. Because I could make them a mix and a condensate of everything I've gone through, I hope it managed to come off as being true, but also a little bit like a good perfume that's been well distilled. I'm hoping.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. And of course, it's not just like one love story either. You have got one like the parents' love story, like wrapped up inside the like wider love story between like. So you've got like Jamie's love story, but then you've got her discovering her parents' love story as well. And I just really liked that.
Well, thank you. The parents' love story is really based on the parents of some of my friends. Because I can't tell you how many people come to Provence and they just fall in love with a local and stay here forever or go back. Most of the English teachers I had growing up, not the ones I had in high school or middle school, but a lot of people I know, they're English teachers because they came to this country, married a spouse, and like, I can teach English. And so many of them just have these great cross-cultural relationships. And that was something that kind of stressed me out because would I ever find someone, well said, Anna, well said. I'm going to have to find that TED Talk. I don't know which one, but I have to go find that.
Yeah, find that too.
Yeah, we'll look that up when this is over. Maybe we can put it in the caption because that would be cool to watch. What was I saying about romance and people? Yeah, bicultural. Just, it's one of those things that worried me because I didn't know if I'd find someone who'd have the same experiences as me. And third culture kids, as they call us, we all have just a different relationship with these cultures because we're brought up in one culture, but it's different from the ones of our parents. And I'm really happy to have found a guy who thinks that my experience is really fun and he can add to it rather than diminish it. And it's one of those things that I'm just so lucky. And a lot of couples are like that too. And at the end of Aix Marks the Spot, I kind of I hope that this comes across, but I wrapped up basically by saying that, yes, the culture is changing here, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing because it's something that's built together out of love. So when all these old people were yelling at me that, yes, the culture is changing and they don't want to lose that culture that's so special to them, I understand. French culture is amazing and I don't want it to go away. And I'm just so privileged to be able to live here. But at the same time, I'm not going to relinquish my identity either. And whatever life I'm going to have is going to be a complete mix of the culture my parents have given me and the culture that has just infused me growing up here.
Yeah.
And the France that I'm living in now is completely different from the France I arrived in 20 years ago. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because people have come together out of love to build just a really wonderful place. And it's still growing and it's still changing. And I want to learn more about culture. I might even go take classes on it. But having lived it firsthand, I can tell you that culture is not a stagnant thing. It is something that changes constantly. And it's really fun to be part of that adventure.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that culture is always changing because you get a lot of people who are resistant towards this change and see any change as a bad thing. Yes. But yeah, you're right about that. Any culture is constantly changing and evolving. And yeah, because I briefly studied prehistoric culture.
That was cool.
At Oxford University, and like although like we can't know for sure like what their culture is about, like we can only base it on the archaeological evidence and through sort of like comparing it to existing cultures today and like with the anthropology aspect. But like the one thing that we were pretty certain about is that the culture would have changed. It wouldn't have been like the same culture for like the whole of prehistory. So
yeah,
that is one of the reasons I love prehistory because we don't know exactly what it was like, and there's just like that flexibility. And yeah, I've always wanted to write a story set in like prehistory about prehistoric culture.
Prehistoric thriller. I would read it.
Okay. I'll take that on board.
There's one question that I didn't get to earlier, but I really wanted to ask, at what point did you decide that you were ready to put these poems out in the world? Sorry, not in front of the camera. Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it's very personal and came out of your therapy. So at what point did you realize I'm ready to put this out here and to put yourself out there?
It was absolutely terrifying, the prospect of publishing this collection, because, like, as you say, it's just so personal and it's all about me, and it's not like I can hide when I publish it, because, like, it was most scary with, like, people that I knew, like family and friends, reading it and sort of like seeing what I was like, because, like, all the time I tried to hide all this from them, so that was quite daunting. But I never really felt like, I didn't wake up one day and think, right, I'm ready to publish it, and I still don't feel like I'm ready to publish it, even though it's been out since January. So it's kind of like a bit of a weird feeling about it. But it was when I showed the poems to some of the parents in the support group whose children are affected, and it was mainly their reactions that really sort of like spurred me to sort of like look into publishing it, because they said it was a really good way to raise awareness for this type of brain inflammation, which in children is called pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome, and in adults it's referred to as autoimmune basal ganglia encephalitis. So, like, I mainly just pushed myself to publish it, just from like the raising awareness point of view, and we gave away free copies to everyone in the support group as well. So I
Wow.
wasn't publishing it just to like make money. It's very much about raising awareness and helping these people. So yeah, we gave away I think it was like up to 1,000 free copies, like on the first like 2 days, just to like people who, like, we posted asking if anyone wanted coffee, and like, yeah, we just because like I didn't really feel comfortable like trying to sell this book to them. So, like, although it is for sale, it's not like something that I've published for the income. It's very much about sort of being therapeutic for me and helping others and raising awareness.
That's amazing. And have you gotten good feedback? Because I mean, the parents you told you in support group, you knew them before and you got to hear it face to face, but have you heard any comments come in since you published?
Yeah, so like I've seen a lot of reviewers, like their comments like on blogs and on Goodreads, and a lot of them are like saying, well, they sort of fall into like two camps really. One is like really enthusiastic about like what I've written and how great it is to be talking about mental health and moving mental health into like this more of a public sphere where it is talked about and it's not just sort of like pretending that it doesn't exist. And then the other um type of reviews I'm getting are people saying like, it's good, but I didn't enjoy it. And it's like, well, you're not really supposed to enjoy it, because like it is a very dark collection, and it's very much about like the intense anxiety and fear that I was feeling. So it's not written for enjoyment. It's written for like self-expression and to
Yeah.
raise awareness. So, but I found a lot of readers, unless they know like me personally, like all the readers who know me personally and know me through like the work I've done in raising awareness, they're very much like seeing it as like an educational tool. But then you've got these other readers who just like find it organically, and they're thinking of it more as entertainment, and they're sort of like evaluating it more critically as if it was like a plot with like a fiction
Right.
manuscript plot. And obviously, it's a completely different type of writing.
Yeah. Dang. Hey, speaking about changing cultures, I mean, if you were to publish this book 10 years ago, it would have had a completely different reaction. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
mental illness has always been around, and people might have been struggling with brain inflammation hundreds, thousands of years ago. But it seems that it's only recently that we're a bit freer, a little bit better at talking about these things. And the fact that you published really adds to that. And you're helping making the culture more open to talking about these types of experience just by the fact that you published. So
Thank you. Yeah, that is. I think it's just really important that we don't shy away from talking about mental health or writing about it, because it needs to be normalized. And often, like up until now, when I've read books that have like mental health as like a big component, often it's been where it's like the person with like mental health issues is often the villain. And
yeah,
you see that in a lot of films as well, where you've got like this psychotic individual and they're seen as more of a danger to everyone around them. Whereas statistically, someone suffering from mental health is more likely to be a victim of others than be like the perpetrator of crimes. So I think it's really important to normalize mental health, and to show that it can affect anyone, but it's not like a bad thing. It just needs to be accepted more.
Yeah.
And I think the more we talk about it, the more it will encourage other people to talk about it and to also seek help, because so many people don't seek help because of the stigma around talking about mental illness.
Definitely. I mean, when I was in high school, I dealt with a lot of depression, and I didn't even have the word for it. I didn't know that those moments were depressive episodes. I just knew that I didn't want to get up in the morning, and sometimes I wanted to jump off a cliff, and I didn't know why. And it's through books that the conversation really got open for me. It's through reading books about characters with these same experiences that I started to learn that no, what you're feeling is not a everyday human experience. And yes, you can start seeing a better future. There are options. There's ways to talk about it. There's ways to medicate if you need to. And I would still be struggling with depression today if I hadn't had books to help me through. And also, thankfully, the change in the culture itself and just having schools, teachers talk to you about mental health. I couldn't have made it through my master's if I didn't have a wonderful support team and people saying, hey, what you're feeling is normal. You shouldn't have to feel it, but it's normal. It's okay. And it will pass. Here's what you can do about it. And I'm just so thankful that people are starting to normalize just everyday healthy practices for healthy mental health. It's just, I'm really thankful that this conversation is happening. And I can't wait to see where we're going to be in 10 years, you know? The next generation is going to have so many great tools at their disposal and so many great YA books coming out at the moment for teenagers to help them deal with this. It's an exciting time to be alive. Yes, thanks, Anna. Well said.
Yeah, it's definitely important that, because before, like traditionally, anyone with mental health problems would just be removed from society, so that no one else was aware of it. Because, I studied mental health in the Victorian area as part of my dissertation when I was at university, and I did actually look at Victorian attitudes towards mental health, and I did a lot of research into like these Victorian asylums. And it's quite scary because the sole purpose of these asylums wasn't to treat these people suffering from mental illness, but it was just to remove them from society so that they didn't get in the way. So
it's shocking. I mean, both of us would probably have ended up in an asylum because we're driven young women who read. We read novels. I saw that once on the list of admittance to that's just, what the heck. So thankfully we do not live in the Victorian era and that we're allowed to be badass young women and we don't have to worry about being, basically being a normal human being as a woman, that counts as a mental health problem for the Victorians. You know the details more than I do, and I'm really simplifying it and probably butchering it, but just the fact that, So yes, I'm so glad this conversation is happening and that we are just, yes, you did. And Vikings, I love your Vikings. You always tell me the best Viking stuff, Anna. She's like the killer Viking lady. I love her. Yes. Oh man, cool stuff. Thank you for all your comments, by the way, Anna. You're really keeping us entertained and keeping us going. I love it.
It's great to have like the interaction as well, because like this is one of the first live videos that we've done, and I wasn't entirely sure how the live comments would work, but yeah, it's really useful just to have someone there giving live comments. So.
Yeah, because otherwise I'd forget this was happening live. And be like, oh, whatever, and I'd make more puns about things being excellent. And just thanks for keeping me grounded, girl. Yeah, so is there anything else we want to talk about? Because I'm seeing that we've got like a minute and a half left if we're setting it to an hour, or we can just keep talking. I don't know if there's actual limitations.
I don't know if there's an actual like limit, but like I remember we said that it should be like a half-hour chat, but yeah, it's just too much content for like half an hour, and it's important to talk about stuff fully. But yeah, I think we've covered most of the things really.
Yeah.
What are you working on currently? Perhaps we can finish on.
Well, Anna's going to be happy to hear that I am binge writing the next Starstruck book. And actually, funnily enough, I was thinking about this while we were talking earlier, but I didn't want to bring it up because that's an extra book to throw in the mix. But I was writing a lot of Starstruck when I was dealing with my depression. And I remember how you said earlier that you didn't think you'd be able to write fiction anymore because of how your brain inflammation happened. Well, and you said you didn't know if you write thrillers anymore once you start treatment and stuff like that. Well, now that I am in a non-depressive time, which is fantastic, and I'm so happy about that, I am struggling to write my Starstruck books because a lot of her drive, well, it came from the same feelings that came from my depression. And I kind of used Sally to fight through these. So Starstruck is a completely absurd sci-fi novel for those of you who don't know what I write. It's just a comedy about adulthood and aliens, but also dealing with anxiety. And the character doesn't get like a magic cure for it, but she's no longer struggling with anxiety and depression as she was in the first book. Right now I'm working on book 7, and she's basically trying to deal with the fact that without having these thoughts of anxiety, she is basically on the other side of the spectrum. She's practically manic, and that's something I also experienced, but I'm having trouble writing it. It's just really, I'm holding myself back again, because I'm like, is my experience authentic? Are readers going to be like, oh, you just cured her, magic cure? And it's like, no. Like, you know, depression, you can get better. And I'm a living truth of that. I don't know if I'll have another depressive episode down the line. It's entirely possible. But right now I'm doing great. And I don't want to jump off cliffs anymore. And I can scream that off rooftops because that's just fantastic. But staying authentic to my character is becoming tough because I'm dissociating from these experiences that I've given her. Because for me right now, they're a memory. They're not something I'm currently experiencing. So anyway, struggling with how readers are going to interpret that and how I am experiencing my own things. It's just not coming together. But maybe I just need to take a step back and calm down. Maybe I'm just getting in my own head. So what are you working on?
Yeah, I'm just working on revisions to my second thriller at the moment. So, yeah, I'm hoping to send it to my agent around sort of like mid-June. So
that's fantastic. Oh, I can't wait to see how you change it because it was already great to begin with. So I'm really excited.
I have completely torn it apart since you read it and just like researched it, and like because you know it's like multiple point of view. It's like the, what do you call it? The way it's divided up between the point of view characters. That's more equal weighting now between the 3 of them.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's gonna be cool. That's gonna be real sweet. And I think that one other thing we're going to talk about: are you planning on publishing anything soon, memoir-wise, or are you gonna spend more time working on? No, yeah. So it was we were talking about if we were going to do anything nonfiction in the very near future, rather than waiting until.
Well, the only sort of like nonfiction project I've got on the go at the moment is like my full-length memoir, and obviously I haven't sort of like reached the end point for like the story within that, so that's going to be quite a while before I publish it. And I'm not entirely sure that I will publish it. Like I might have to like sit on it a bit first. But
Okay.
I do also write personal essays as well. So like I did write a lot of essays last year, and I haven't really got back into it because I've been more focused on fiction at the moment. But who knows, maybe I will write some more personal essays about neuropsychiatric illness.
Cool. That's awesome.
Okay, so I think we've covered everything in that chat now. So
I think so. Anna, any questions? And anyone else who's out there who might not be commenting? No? All right.
Like a minute or so then, I guess. And
this has been really cool, by the way. I love how this is happening, and I can't wait to see you talk with other authors too. I will be tuning into all your lives because you got cool people lined up.
I'm really excited because like I've got another one today actually with Sue William Silverman, who's the author of this essay collection.
Oh,
by the camera. There we go. How to Survive Death and Other Inconveniences.
And that's a great title.
It's a memoir, but it's also it's like a memoir made up of essays, and each one looks at her obsession with death in a different angle, and it's so like literary and it's just amazing. And I love this book, so I'm really excited to talk to her next.
That's gonna be so cool.
That's happening in like a couple of hours.
I'm gonna be tuning in. I can't wait to see. Oh, and I want to read that too because just the title alone sounds really great.
Yeah, the title just grabbed me as soon as I heard it. I was like, I need to read this. So yeah, I'll see you for the that interview later then. I'll look out for your little in the live chat.
Yes, so that's gonna be so cool. Hey, I get to be on that side. All right. So I guess that's covered it.
I think so. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. This is so much fun. I hope we get to do another one sometime.
Yeah, we should do one all about like our writing processes for fiction.
Yes, that'd be great.
Like all the about that.
Yeah. We have some fun fiction books. I mean, you have great series, and I would love to talk about it more. And my wrist just cracked. That was very weird.
Oh, no.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye.